Okay. Yeah. This isn't gonna be. It's not gonna be easy, but you know, from my experience, most things that need to be done, they're usually not. So, yeah, let's do it.
Maybe if you don't want to talk, you could just listen.
Alright, gang, what is happening? I am Mal Foster, and you are listening to the latest episode of Dimed Out. It's a different episode. There's going to be no usual spiel at the front. There's going to be no plugs, no advertising. Yeah, none of that. If you want to look at what there is in terms of extended projects and other stuff associated with the podcast, just simply look in the show notes. That's about it. Yeah, this episode is going to be different. It's impromptu. It certainly wasn't planned. It's going to be a lot rougher around the edges. It's not going to be as nicely put together, but I don't think it should be because of the content of it, really. It's as I said, it wasn't planned, but I do feel it's necessary. I feel like this conversation is necessary. And with everything that I do in this show, I hope that it is of a benefit to other people. I hope that you guys listening get something from it. And, I hope that you can't relate. But if you do, I hope that there is some sense of solace there, some sense of comfort. But, first and foremost, I hope this conversation benefits me. The guest for this week's episode is somebody that I think I can say with a good amount of confidence that I know pretty well. Probably better than anybody else does, with maybe a couple of exceptions. I don't know. It's somebody that I've known pretty well for a long time, but it's somebody that I seldom really speak to anymore, on a regular level about important things. And that has become a detriment, and it's become something that I miss, and it's become something that has had a somewhat of an effect on me in recent memory, in recent times. And I want to rectify that. And that's why I use the word necessary, because I feel like this conversation with this guest is really long overdue and will, as I say, hopefully be of a huge benefit to me. So, yeah, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Hey Mal, how are you doing? It has been a minute since we last spoke, properly, that is, beyond a surface level, as it were.
Yeah, for sure.
How are you? How are you doing? How's things? Well, yeah, it has been a moment since we spoke properly, as you say, beyond the surface. How am I doing? Actually, at the minute, in all honesty, I'm doing all right. And that is a little bit of a stock answer that I give whenever anybody tends to ask me that question, as well. It's just easier to say, yeah, I'm doing all right, even if you're really not. And I haven't been lately, but at the minute, in all earnestness, today I'm doing okay. Not too good, not too bad, just kind of right down the line. Genuinely, for a change. Well, first of all, man, I'm sorry to hear that you've not been doing so good. I'm really pleased that you can actually say that, and that you don't feel like you have to, put on the pantomime mask, and what have you. Because I do know what you mean about that stock answer thing. Yeah, it's just easier to say you're all right. But sincerely, I'm really sorry to hear that you haven't been doing so good. But what's going on? And you can always talk to me, right? You know that. Yeah, well, yes and no, I do. I know in my heart that I can talk to you. I know that in my heart I've always been able to talk to you, but, you know how it is sometimes you don't want to for a number of reasons. Partly you are sticking your head in the sand, hoping that if you just tough it out, you just plow through, stiff upper lip and all that bullshit, you'll get through it and whatnot. You think you can kind of just handle it all yourself and get through to the other end all right if you just keep moving.
Yeah.
But why is that exactly? Is that just a stubbornness kind of thing? Is that just because you want to do it yourself? You want to carry all the load yourself?
Yeah.
Or sorry. Yes and no. Again, it's yes and no. You don't want to carry it full stop, and like I said, you kind of just. I mean, I do, and you will know exactly what I'm talking about here as well. You kind of just put your head down, you move forward. It's the thing that we've called shark mentality, where you just keep going with the hope that eventually you'll just power through it. And so you don't want to carry it yourself, because to carry it yourself is to recognize it, to realize and to verbalize internally at first that there's something wrong, that there's something not working, that you're not happy. And then when you realize that, you then have to zoom in a little bit closer and try and figure out why you're not happy. Or sometimes, as has been the case, the why is very omnipresent. The why is always there. You don't have to sort of stop and question. It's like you're running away from it. Like it's very present and you're running away from it. So it's not even a case sometimes of just, as I said, sort of powering through. It's a case of just trying to avoid it, trying to outrun it. But you get to a point where you just can't do that. You just fall.
Yeah.
And then it's gaining on you even closer.
Yeah.
To the point where it's on top of you. And then when it's there and you have no other option but to confront it, but to carry it, then you do kind of want to carry it yourself out of stubbornness, because you're proud. You are stubborn. You are proud. You value your independence to a great amount. But at the same time, it's not just that. It's a case of, I don't want to burden other people with my problems.
Right.
And that is probably the most singular, ridiculous statement I could probably make.
Yeah.
But it's true, because it's ridiculous because... I get it. It's ridiculous because the people that love you, that care about you, that it's not a burden to them.
Yeah.
And you know this. This is the thing. You know this. But it's your self-esteem. It's your own mindset, which is constantly telling you the opposite and sort of presenting that as the truth. When really, deeply, you know it's not. You know that they do care and it's not a burden to them.
Yeah.
You're right. And definitely on a deep-rooted level, on a root level, I do know that people care and that me talking to them about stuff isn't a burden. But, on a surface level, it feels like it is. And it's really difficult to shake, or at the very least find a compromise between the two. You know what I mean? Like finding a meeting point between that deep, true, rooted realization and then the sort of the faux surface fear-based realization. You say fear, that's interesting. You say fear-based realization. Do you think that's where it comes from? Do you feel like that is what is preventing you from being more open and honest with people in particular that care about you, people within your inner sanctum, as it were, the people that you love and that you would want to come and speak to you about their problems? Because that's, no offense, but that is the problem here, is there is a great sense of hypocrisy at work. Because you are always open to people if they have problems. You want them to come and talk to you. You want them to sort of be transparent and vulnerable. And you talk even in a public sphere.
Yeah.
And this isn't me having a go at you, because that's the last thing I want to do. But you talk in a public sphere about people being transparent, about the importance of transparency and vulnerability, and talking openly, candidly about your mental health. And yet, you can't do it yourself, not as much as you should be, you know. Is it based on fear? Do you feel like that if you try and reach out to people, you'll be rejected? Well, first and foremost, I realise you're not having a go at me. It's totally fine. It's nothing I haven't said to myself before. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a definite sense of hypocrisy about it. I am very open to promoting the idea of transparency and vulnerability. I'm very encouraging for other people to do it. I'm just not as encouraging as I probably should be for doing it myself. But I guess that's what this is about. I guess what this conversation is leading towards is progress in that area. But yeah, do I feel it's based out of fear? I kind of do, to be honest. Definitely more so subconsciously than consciously. But I feel like, and you know this, that I've had a fair bit of rejection in my life, from childhood onwards. People have left, people have abandoned me. I've done it to myself. I'm very much one of those people that have rejected me. And yeah, I think that definitely plays a part in it. That's kind of interesting, because you kind of put on this front that you don't give a shit about what anybody thinks about you, but yet you clearly do, it seems. Yeah, again, it's kind of yes and no with that as well. Yes, I do absolutely give a shit what some people think about me. Again, the people that are close to me, the people that I care about, the people that I know, again, at a deep-rooted level, care about me. Those people, I do care about what they think of me, because I want them to feel like I'm a good part of their life, that they are somebody they can talk to. I want to be somebody that brings them a sense of comfort, of joy, of happiness, for both selfless and selfish purposes. I want them to feel that. But in terms of strangers, in terms of people I haven't met, yeah, I don't. And that isn't a front. And I'm not trying to sort of isolate myself from people. Are you sure? Because it kind of sounds like you are. A little bit. Yeah, no. I guess... I guess I am, to a degree, purposely am isolating myself from some people. I guess it's more a case of just vetting who I let in and who I want to give my time and attention to, and who I want to receive time and attention from. Right, and I get that. As you said, you're vetting, you're kind of being a lot more selective, because as you said, you've had a fair amount of rejection in your life. You've had people turn on you. You've seen people be callous and cruel and unkind, and you've been hurt by that. I understand that. I fully understand that. And so you are, as you say, vetting. You're kind of being more selective. But sometimes I think that you are being too selective. I think sometimes you are being too guarded. I think sometimes you are not giving people a chance that perhaps deserve a chance, even if you don't think they do, or perhaps you are just closing yourself off to opportunities. That's what it seems like a little bit from my perspective. I kind of get what you mean. I feel like maybe there's some truth to that, and that's something I think with your help I would like to work on, and I think I could work on over the foreseeable. It's one of a few things that I want to work on. You hit on something there that's kind of pretty true, and that's the idea of closing myself off to opportunities. And that's not in terms of like career or like life fabric opportunities. Well, life fabric in the sense of meeting and engaging and interacting with people that could actually be a lot more sort of rewarding and enriching than I give them credit for, or that I just presume. There's a lot of presumption on my behalf, and that's something else that I'm trying to work on. Yeah, for sure. And that's good. That's a good thing that you're actually able to identify these things, that you have, as you say, you've stopped running. And rather than let these things continue to get on top of you, you're kind of making some small steps to addressing them. Verbalizing them internally and having conversations like this, it can only help move forward. And you can only move forward if you identify areas and directions in which to move towards, So yeah, I'm pleased to hear that. I'm pleased to hear that you're kind of looking at what's happening and you're looking at the possibilities of things that you can work on. You know, because nothing's guaranteed. There's no easy fix in any of this. But if you are willing to sort of be a bit more open and a bit more expansive, and you are having the understanding that there's something not quite right and there's something that you could possibly be doing or at least attempting. And you know how we love that phrase, that idea of the attempt. It's very true. You know, it's not always going to work, but at least the attempt gives you a better understanding of what's happening, of what you're going through, and where you could possibly end up going to. Speaking of which, let's get into that, because that's a pretty big topic that is been very prevalent in your life. I am, of course, talking about you emigrating from the UK to the US, which would be how long? About 2.5 years now. Okay, yeah, about 2.5 years since I moved. All right, how's that experience been for you? How do I even answer that question? There's no straightforward answer to that question, I'll be honest. You would think it would be a pretty straightforward one. But yeah, for the most part, when people have asked, again, going back to what I was saying before, I've kind of gone with the non-committal, straight down the middle answer of, yeah, it's been all right, because it's easier that way. It stops people kind of probing questions and digging past the surface and really kind of understanding what it has been like. On a fundamental sort of first and foremost level, being with my wife has been amazing. It's been more than what I expected. You know, it's what I wanted for the longest time. And we waited what felt like an eternity to be together in terms of the geographical distance and then the sort of bureaucratic distance that sort of rolled out during the official process of getting here. So sending off paperwork and basically sending off my life in an envelope and waiting for people in offices with red pens to put the right marks in the right places and let us kind of be together. So being with her has been amazing. She has just really solidified herself as the love of my life, my best friend, and so much more. It's not being with her that's been problematic for me. It's being here that has. How do you mean? What do you mean by that? Okay, so a part of this is circumstantial, a part of it isn't. And I'm going to try and explain as best I can in a condensed fashion, but you know me and my segues. So I arrived here in the US and in Central Texas back in January 2019. And at that point, the wedding was just shy of 3 months away. And in that period, that 2 months and change period, I had my hands sort of bureaucratically tied. I couldn't do anything. I could get a driver's license, but it would be a temporary one that would only last as long as the marriage visa. So, and then I'd have to just reapply all over again. So it really didn't seem worth it. I couldn't work until after we got married, and then I had to apply for a work sort of authorization permit, essentially. So again, more sort of bureaucratic holding patterns. So in that initial 2 months period, 2 month and change, it was perfectly fine. It was like, I say it was perfectly fine. At first, the first week I was incredibly homesick. And it was all new and alienating and daunting and weird and everything that you would expect given the circumstance. You know, and at the time, my wife was working. So she was out all day and I was left by myself. And the thing about Central Texas is it just hates pedestrians. So you really can't get very far by foot. And without a driver's license, without a car, that's pretty much what I was limited to. But that was fine because it was a short period of time. And I was getting to kind of walk to the places that I could, kind of getting a feel for the neighborhood, kind of also just enjoying essentially what was like a small holiday. You know, I just quit my job And so it was kind of nice. At first, it was like a prolonged holiday where I kind of just got to do whatever I wanted. And that was fine, that was nice, but eventually that kind of began to wear off a little bit. Anyway, moving forward, wedding happens, that was wonderful, and yeah, then we get to change my adjustment of status, I believe it's called, where I am considered a legal permanent resident and given a 2-year green card. And with that comes the ability to work and get a driving license and all of that stuff. But again, it's a holding pattern, and it's a holding pattern that is really kind of prolonged. And during that prolonged session, summer hits. And I don't know if you've ever been to Central Texas in the summer, but it is ridiculously hot, and I couldn't really leave the house past 12 o'clock, say about noon, because I'm just not used to that kind of heat. And again, I can't really get very far by foot, so my choices are pretty limited. So I kind of had a bit of a dry run at the whole lockdown quarantine thing before everybody else during the summer. Cutting forward again a little bit, my paperwork finally gets approved in about the end of October, and I apply for a job at a local Starbucks, and I get hired. And, I'm kind of conflicted. How so? Because I would imagine after being in a holding pattern for so many months, you would just be happy to have any job. Yeah. Really, that's kind of getting you out of the house and right. Interacting with people. And right, and I totally get what you mean, and that was definitely a big part of it. And that's why I said it was conflicting, because there was that sense of, okay, now I'm getting to expand my sphere. Now I can actually begin to widen my parameters. Now I can expand my world. I can get to meet new people. I have a structure that isn't just set by me. I have a sense of quote-unquote normalcy. Not only that, but this is like an inroads to a greater sense of independence. This is me actually earning my own wage. I'm able to buy my own things, eventually save up for my own car. This is like a launching pad to a future. A self-sufficient part of my future's mechanism, as it were. But the conflicting part of it comes from the fact it was a customer service job, a fast-paced, demanding customer service job, which I've never liked, really. I've done them in the past. I didn't like them when I was younger, but as an adult at the age of 34, 35 at the time, I just fucking hated it. To be perfectly blunt, I fucking hated it. It was convenient because it was literally just down the road from me, so it was within walking distance, so I didn't need a car to get to work and to get back home. But I just, instantly, I just felt my anxiety flaring up like it hadn't done for years. I once left a job in a supermarket because my anxiety was getting so crippling, and I had made so many requests, polite requests, formal requests to the powers that be, that they moved me to a different area. Each one was either ignored or blocked, and it just got to a point where I had to leave one day, and I could feel it pretty quickly from starting at Starbucks, that level of just all-consuming anxiety and depression seeping in again. Yeah. And I mean, I know what that's like, and it's awful to deal with, especially when it's in a pressured, sort of quick turnaround environment like that. Presumably you were looking for other places. You weren't just sort of, it's content, and you weren't going to just settle with just stewing in there. No. Right. No, I was looking for other places. I was making applications. I was seeking other jobs, but just not hearing anything, and also just becoming really increasingly demotivated after a certain point, because I was just coming home every day aggravated, anxious as hell, just nerves on fire, or depressed, one of the two. And, as much as I was trying to kind of stick a resolve and apply for different places, some days I'd be perfectly fine and I'd get a number of applications out on the day. Some stretches of time I wouldn't even look for a week because I was just so dejected. It became sort of like a feedback loop of negative emotions. some of which were, admittedly self-inflicted, some of which were circumstantial, and yeah, just trying to sort of navigate that was difficult. And the funny thing is, I'd spent so many months kind of cut off from having regular interactions with people. I mean, I would go to coffee shops, I would go to supermarkets, to kind of just be amongst people at times. But for the period before getting the work permit, I was kind of cut off from like people in a way, really. Right. But then you get a job in which I would say, and I think it's fair to say that one of the major tent poles of a job like that is actually interacting with people, being around people. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of an irony, really, because I spent so long sort of not having that, and then my sphere gets bigger, my world gets bigger, and then I have the opportunity to be interacting with people, to be getting to know people in the area, in the neighborhood, kind of just sort of filling in the sort of blank space of the pencil sketch drawing of me with a bit of color, as it were. And it turns out to be kind of a double-edged sword, because it's giving me that, but at the same time it's also a pretty sharp, immediate reminder of just, and it's not all people, because there are incredibly good people out there, there are incredibly lovely people, there are decent people, there are straight down the middle people who are neither one or the other, but there are complete assholes out there as well, and a job like that, unfortunately, does have a tendency to attract a number of said assholes, people that are, very entitled and very intolerant. And the weird twist of it was, the more time I was spending in an environment where there was a lot of entitlement and intolerance, it was making me both a little bit entitled and extremely intolerant. I mean, I have to laugh because it's kind of funny how ridiculous and absurd it is. I'm wanting for the longest time to get out there and expand my little universe and have more interaction with people. And then when I do, I don't want it, because I just see the bad in a lot of people. And again, I see the good in a number of people, and I see the perfectly fine in a number of people. But I don't know, maybe it was just a case of negative emotions amplifying negative perception. But I find it just kind of, now I find it kind of funny. Then, not so much. Of course, the big twist in all of this is, of course, COVID. So that happens in March 2020. That's when it kind of begins to really mushroom. And I had been at Starbucks since November. So I'm over just over the 4-month hump of being there. And then, suddenly COVID hits. And we go to a point where we're having restrictions, where we're having, precautions, PPE, and what have you. And then all staff are given a choice, if they don't feel safe, to take paid leave. And because my wife has asthma and pre-existing conditions, and because I just didn't want to fucking catch COVID as well, I'll be honest, I decided to take paid leave and, kind of sit it out for as long as possible to see, like a lot of people, how this thing was going to play out. And then it gets to a point where the company offers employees, I think it was 3 choices, one of which was to carry on with unpaid leave, but you can be called back at any time if your local store needs you. And I can't remember what the other one was, but the one that I took was redundancy. Because at this point, cases were just going up and up and up and up. And this is way before vaccines were on the horizon. This is when things were just still so uncertain. Nobody really had a grasp of what was happening. And it was, living day to day, hour by hour, in terms of updates and kind of keeping an eye on what was happening. And because there was so much uncertainty, and because of not wanting to catch COVID and not wanting to pass it on to my wife with pre-existing conditions, I took paid redundancy. So this conflicting job that on one hand I really hated, but at the same time gave me a sense of independence, gave me a sense of structure, was beginning to expand my universe I no longer had. And that was that. So kind of a little bit of a roller coaster all of its own, yeah, to say the least, which has not been easy to navigate. No, I can't imagine it has been at all. I think you did the right thing, absolutely, taking redundancy, especially at a point where there was so much uncertainty, and if your wife does have pre-existing conditions, and like you say, you don't want to catch COVID. So, and in a place like that, when you're having so much public-facing work going on and you're seeing so many different people, yeah, it's a much higher yield of possible infection. So I think you did the right thing, but yeah, it doesn't sound like it's been particularly easy on that front and in that particular section of things, but I'm imagining it's not just the work aspect which has been difficult for you. No, it's not. I mean, it would be one thing if I could just pin, a whole bunch of unhappiness on that one thing. It would be a lot more manageable and containable and sort of compartmentalized, but it's not. It's the location. As I said before, I love being with my wife. I just struggle being here. For a number of reasons, geographically, philosophically, culturally, it's difficult. I mean, I've always felt like I've never belonged. I've always been kind of a bit of an odd kid, turning into an odd adult. But I've never felt more out of place for a number of reasons. As I said before, it's so widespread out here that it's almost impossible to walk places, especially in the summer, which we're in right now, the thick of it. July, and it's just ridiculously roasting temperatures. And 2.5 years later, I do have a driver's license now, but I still don't have a car. So, and I don't have a job to pay for the car insurance or put petrol in the car, so it's kind of a catch-22. So, yeah, from a geographical standpoint, I miss pedestrianisation like crazy. I miss being able to walk to places that aren't just like the park down by the end of the road. Like where we live is a nice enough area, it's good for running, but in terms of like exploring and, as I say, expanding my universe, I'm really kind of locked in a little bit. And I'm very lucky in the sense that I live in a safe area, that I live in a comfortable house, that I have food in the fridge. I no matter what happens, I never lose sight of that. I always try and kind of be conscious and remind myself of how fortunate I am in comparison to others. But yeah, I feel, and have done really ever since I've come here, sort of out of place, right, in a big way. But it's not just the walk-in thing, right? It's not just the actual physical environment, I'm guessing. You mentioned philosophically and culturally. Yeah, no, it's not just the walk-in thing. It's definitely those things as well. I really don't sort of fit in with the environment. I'm not a huge fan of labels, but I think to kind of make this a little bit clearer, to frame it a bit better, you could consider me a liberal vegetarian agnostic who gives a shit about the environment. So I don't really fit in, I'm not part of the key core demographic here, which is fine. That's fine, difference is great. Difference is wonderful, and it makes for a more diverse and dynamic existence. It would be awful if we're all the same, but it just, right. I don't know. I don't feel ostracized because nobody has used differences against me. Okay, so far. Right. So I can't say that I feel ostracized at all because of the differences and the fact that I don't fit in with the sort of philosophical, cultural nature of the area. But it's difficult, And I've met some like-minded people. I have met some people on a similar wavelength to me, on a very similar wavelength to me. But they are few and far between. Right. It is, as I say, it's just difficult sort of existing in a landscape which isn't just a case of being different, but that you are opposed to in a lot of ways. Okay. When you say opposed to, what do you... It's a number of things, really. I think one of the major things is that as I'm getting older, I'm becoming not just distant from religion and Christianity in particular, but actively disliking it more and more. And yet it is very much sewn into the identity here. And it's everywhere, it's kind of omnipresent. It's not so much people are forcing it down your throat. It's not like people are knocking on the door offering you pamphlets, but it is everywhere. And for something that I just really can't stomach, that can be difficult to kind of just have, as I say, as an omnipresent aura. It's also the fact that it's entwined in politics as well here, very much so. It really kind of shapes and informs people's political views and decisions. And I'm talking about like voters, but also those that are in charge as well. And that is not just uncomfortable, but it's genuinely frightening when you are having, a religious basis form political motivation and change. And not good change either. We're talking about like regressive change. So, at a in a place which already kind of feels a little bit stilted, to feel like it's maybe going backwards even further is concerning. Right, it's a concern for the future. Yeah, sure. But I'm guessing it's not just religious-based stuff to which you kind of feel like there's a sense of opposition. No, it's not. There's a number of things. Religion is pretty high up there, but there's a number of things. The gun thing I really don't get. And I understand that's because I come from a culture which has not dealt with guns, which has not had guns really in its, in its history, that doesn't have, again, that kind of mindset and that aspect sewn into its identity. But it is very much sewn into the identity here in this part of the country. And again, especially with laws being loosened, I'm really trying not to go off on a political tangent here, but with laws being loosened in that sense, when there's a constant problem that's just getting worse, that's frightening, and it's alienating, and it's uncomfortable. But it's not just that either, there's other stuff. I mean, like the patriotism that is pretty rampant here. I've never been a patriotic person. I've never ever got the whole I love my country thing. Never got that. And that's just a differing of opinion. I understand some people really do, but it just seems almost neo-jingoistic at points. And again, it's uncomfortable, and it's it's just things that are kind of the opposite of me are sort of enveloped around me, it feels like sometimes. Right. I mean, I have met a couple of like-minded people. It's not like I'm completely stranded in a sort of barren wasteland of pro-lifers forcing their militant views down my throat. It's not like that, but it's very noticeable, and it's kind of difficult, And look, I love the fact that we have varied, differing opinions. It makes the world more dimensional. It's something I've really tried to kind of do with the podcast and sort of explore that a little bit more of late. But it can be difficult living in that landscape when it's completely, contrasting to who you are and who you identify as a person. It's not a case of just solely, I don't like where I'm at. There's a bit of that, but there's also a lot of I miss where I'm from. Right, okay, and I get that, but you do realise that all of these things that you're talking about, they do exist back in Britain, right? There is like a strong conservative contingency. There are people that are entitled and intolerant. There are some pretty awful people back in Britain, and you're not having a deep and meaningful and profound conversation with everybody over there either. Yeah. No, you're right. I'm not. And yeah, there are a lot of intolerable assholes over in Britain as well. But I think it stems down to relatability. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, they're assholes, but they're my assholes. I understand these people more. I understand this landscape more. I understand this mindset more. This is more of what I know. And that's natural. We all are, no matter what we believe, no matter where we're from, no matter what our background, we're all afraid of the unknown. It is the one universal truth, aside from the need to be needed and loved to a degree, is the need to understand. And yeah, I kind of understand those ourselves over a lot better, and I understand the scenario and the landscape, and it's relatable. And I think ultimately that's what it boils down to, because I've had, 2.5 years, a lot of which, the vast majority of which, has been spent indoors, mainly through circumstance, whether that be through paperwork or through pandemics. It's kind of really cut the legs off any chance to grow a sense of relatability or understanding or just comfort being here. It feels like for the last 2.5 years I've been waiting for my life to start, and it hasn't. And that's, I think, ultimately the core of what has been a problem for me, what has been a pretty deep-rooted sadness for me, in all honesty. Right. Yeah. And I get that. Because you just, I guess you just want to kind of get out there and, as you say, start your life and just begin to expand your universe. And, what was it you said? Fill in the colours of a pencil sketch drawing? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, and that's pretty much how I feel, at the minute. I feel like the outline of me is there in pencil, but there's been no ink work done and there's no colours yet. And again, that's partly circumstantial, but it's also kind of environmental, and it's internal. It's a lot of things. I can't just, as much as I get aggravated and I say that, I don't particularly have the greatest fondness for where I'm at, despite having the utmost fondness and love, undying love for the person I'm with. I don't have the greatest fondness for where I'm at physically, but also in terms of who I am at this stage. But these are things that can change, and these are things that I'm trying to concentrate on. These are things that I'm trying to look at how I can move forward, what I can fix, what I can do, what is within my power, what is within my reach at the minute. But at the same time, I'm learning to listen to myself. I'm learning to just stop ignoring that these things are affecting me. I'm learning to have conversations like this one, that are pivotal to moving forward, to growing, to expanding my universe, to expanding myself, to colouring in that pencil drawing, giving it a solid ink outline and definition and detail. And that will come with time, and that will come with a change in circumstance. But it will also come with proactive behaviour. And that includes being practical, doing things that can help move me forward. But it also comes with being responsive to what is happening in the moment, and listening and feeling and allowing myself to feel, and not running away from things, not running away pretending that there isn't a problem when there is, and just coming to the point of just not running anymore and looking at what's happening and allowing myself to feel what I feel, and just allowing myself to be open and not be numb anymore, and stop trying to make myself numb to it, stop trying to numb myself away from what is happening. Just being transparent, first and foremost with myself, but then with other people too, and realizing that I'm not an island and I do need help, and I don't have to do this by myself, and at points I just can't do this by myself. Yeah, I do. Can I ask a pretty personal question? Yeah, of course you can. How exactly is it that you've been running away from how you feel? And I suppose to dig a little bit deeper into it as well, if you want to talk about this, is how exactly have you been feeling? We've mentioned isolation, but, that's one part of it. Mm-hmm. And, we haven't really kind of tapped into how exactly those feelings have manifested. Right. Which, if you feel comfortable talking about, I'd love to kind of get into that, to kind of get a better understanding of what's been happening. Yeah. I don't mind talking about it at all. In fact, I think it would actually be kind of helpful. I guess the best way to put it is that over the last 2.5 years, periodically, by the way. It's not been like completely over the last 2.5 years flat. But over the last 2.5 years, periodically at different stages, I've been dealing with what I would say is a sort of two-headed beast. The first head is depression, the second is anxiety. And these are not new. I'm not estranged from these. They've always kind of been a somewhat of a constant presence to some degree throughout most of my adult life. But in the last 2.5 years, I've really kind of got to know both of them really well again. And they manifest themselves in different ways. I think with depression, more so than anxiety, there's a sense of detachment. And that comes in a lot of forms. Detachment from little things that used to give me joy, big things that are a part of me that, I've always loved, like music, film. I used to love just digging into the wider world, searching for new music and film, and just really throwing myself into that. And at the start of the pandemic, I really did throw myself into the sort of history of film. And I love doing that. But then, like, in the last 6 months, it just feels like I've had, just a real detachment from that. Like, I feel nothing from it anymore. I think the best way to describe it is things that used to taste sweet, taste bitter now, or don't have any taste at all. And that's what's going on there. But it's not just internal stuff with detachment, it's very much external as well, detached from the wider world as a whole, which I understand is something I think most of us have at least felt at some point during the last year. What is it they call it? Compassion fatigue. It's like that, but on a much larger scale. It seems it's just like I have just kind of given up with caring about a lot of things, really. I just don't seem to have the energy or interest or the will to care about larger things. And that's kind of scary because at heart, I think I'm a pretty empathetic person. And I hope that hasn't really done any sizable damage to that. But yeah, detachment is probably the one key way in which it has manifested itself. Depression, as I say, more so than anxiety. This idea of just being detached from things that I love, from myself, from the wider world, from the sense of caring, from a sense of motivation, from the idea of betterment, and yeah, just from people as well. It's weird to say, and some people listening might not understand because you might be thinking, well, you live with your wife and you've said that she's your best friend as well, so how could you possibly feel lonely? But there are times where I have felt lonely, and I think that plays into the idea of isolation. Being away from the people I know back home as well, that's been really difficult. It's not just a case of that I haven't forged new connections here or coloured out the pencil drawing of myself here in Central Texas, but being away from the people and the things that I love and care about and can relate to and know about back home has really played into the alienation, isolation aspect of it, and has really kind of fed into that sense of detachment as well. But one thing that has really kind of helped push back against that is speaking with people back home throughout the pandemic. And even something like playing Dungeons and Dragons, like getting myself into that has actually been really helpful because that's helped me forge new connections with people that I really get on with. And it's doing something fun and new and something that I'm learning about at the same time. So that has ticked a lot of boxes. So, yeah, like I said, it's been ebbs and flows. It's not like it's been a continuous 2.5 years of just morbid disconnect from the world. But the last 6 months has been pretty difficult in the sense that I've just felt very removed from a lot of things. Internal, external, micro, macro, you name it. I've felt detached, disconnected, and at times, despite having the love of my life in the very house that I live in, I've felt periods of genuine loneliness. And I suppose that kind of ties into the second part of your question about how I've been sort of running away from it. I've been pretty cognitive of what's been going on, but I've never really wanted to sit down and really address it and think about how I can deal with it. Or even, as I said before, just sit with it and feel it. I've not wanted to do that. So I've run away from it by keeping busy. Would that be with the podcast you've been doing? Yeah, I mean, amongst other things, yeah, but definitely with the podcast has definitely. I mean, it started off with all good intentions as a creative outlet, as a new project for me to sink my teeth into, to do the things that I was talking about that give me joy. To tap into music and film, and opening up the whole learning curve of life that we're on. To dig in and find new things and to find out about things that I already know a little bit about. It all started with good intentions, and it was amazing because it kind of felt like, okay, this is a real good focus for me to have, to be creative and to get joy from doing what I'm doing. But the more I kind of sank into it, and the more that sort of depression and anxiety sank into me, it became almost a crutch. It became somewhat of an escape. I began to just sort of plow hours and hours and hours and hours into it to where it became compulsive and obsessive. And it wasn't for the fact that I was trying to make a better product or trying to make something more dynamic. It was an escape, and it was something that would help me run away from what I was feeling and stop me from sitting down and just feeling what I was feeling and looking at what I was going through. It stopped me from having to face up to what was happening because I didn't have the time. Is that something that you're still doing now? Or have you... No, not as much. I mean, I'm still trying to kind of keep busy with it, but I am slowly kind of trying to find a compromise. I will go through cycles. I'm a very cyclical person in the sense that I will kind of be very, very busy for a period of time, and then I'll stop being busy. And it's one or the other. That's pretty much how a big stretch of my life has been, is I'm doing everything all of the time at once, or I'm doing nothing, and then I'm either left with no room to contemplate at all, or I'm left with nothing but room to contemplate. So at the minute, I'm trying to be, conscious of the fact that this thing that I love doing, that I still love doing, is something that can and has become an obsession. I'm trying to kind of find the middle of the seesaw, as it were, or at the very least be mindful that there is a middle of the seesaw. And that goes across the board. It's not just with doing the podcast, it's just with everything. The idea of moderation is something that has escaped me for some time, to say the least. So I'm trying to find a more prominent sense of moderation. And that goes with the larger scale picture as well. Okay, what do you mean? Just that, I used to be really, really kind of far too attached to the past. I used to just ruminate on past mistakes. I used to just, I was just really embedded in what has been, and just with regrets and just wishing things could be different in certain areas.
Yeah.
And, just kind of really clinging too tightly to things I couldn't change. And now, of late, within the last 6 months to the last year, maybe even more, I don't know at this point, I've just kind of been doing the exact same thing but with the future, just really clinging on to, well, what am I going to be doing? Where am I going to be at? What will my job be? How will I feel? Will I be happy? And it's that has been sinking its teeth into me, over the last while. That idea of just worrying and fretting about what the future is going to hold.
Right.
where I'm going to be, who I'm going to be, what's going to be happening. And it's, it's one thing to have foresight, it's one thing to look ahead, to be mindful of where it is you want to be going, and be prepared and be pragmatic and look towards the future. But I have just been consumed by the future in a really unhealthy, anxious way, and now I'm trying to again find the middle of the seesaw. Not look too far ahead, not look back, but just look at now and look at the good things that I have going for me now. Being in the moment, being in now. Because really that's all we have. And this is something, again, that I know. On a root level, I know this. On a root level, I know that all we have is now. But it can be difficult. When you feel consumed by detachment, by dread, by guilt, by worry, by anxiety, by uncertainty, by alienation, by the strange. It's difficult to be cognizant and mindful of that. But I think this conversation has helped a lot. It's helped sort of bring to light a few things for me. Good. And it's helped cement the idea of the middle of the seesaw, the balance. The idea of the now. That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying for. And again, the attempt, it means so much more than I think any of us really give it credit for. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really pleased that this conversation was beneficial to you. I had a feeling it would be. I've got a lot from it, and it makes me happy to know that you've got a lot from it as well. And I think that your mind is leaning towards the right idea. The idea of not getting yourself overwhelmed by the future, of wondering, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be happy? Because you can't answer that. You don't know what's going to happen. You can work on now, and what you do, as you say, now in the moment can sort of build towards the possibilities of a happy future, but you can't predict that. You can't find that out, until you're there. And so I think you're on the right track. I understand why you're asking that. When you're in a situation where you are filled with a sense of uncertainty, when you've had a very uncertain 2 and a bit years, you're going to ask yourself that. It's kind of normal, I think, to be asking, am I going to be happy? Where am I going to be? What am I going to be doing, etc. But there is something that comes to mind. Let me just find it a second. That I was reading the other day, and it really hit home, and I think you would benefit, from this. Alright, so here we go. It's a great quote. The deepest secret is that life is not a process of discovery, but a process of creation. You are not discovering yourself, but creating yourself anew. Seek, therefore, not to find out who you are, but seek to determine who you want to be. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, completely agree with that. And that's, what I'm trying to get myself in the mindset of really understanding and appreciating. Absolutely. And, speaking of appreciating, before I let you head off, I just want to say that I really appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk to me. I know that some of this hasn't been easy, but as I said before, I feel like this is necessary. And, I'm just really appreciative of the fact that you took the time to sit down and chat. And I'm just appreciative of you. And, before I let you go about your business, I just wanted to say something to you that I haven't said for a long time. And that's that I love you. I really, truly do. I love you. It might not seem like it sometimes. It might feel like the opposite, but I do. I love you. I always have done. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've overcome. And I'm proud of what you will become. Alright, gang, so there you go. That was a very, very much needed conversation with myself. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, with all sincerity, thank you. Thank you for indulging me with this. I understand it's a bit of a strange concept, and, it's maybe not what you came looking for, but it's something I needed to do first and foremost for myself. And, being more honest and open and transparent is something I need to do for myself more. But it's also something I want to do for you guys as well. Now, I'm not going to say I'm going to do another episode like this. I'm probably, most definitely not going to. But just in general, I just want to be more open and more real with you guys, because you give me time from your life, and I can never, ever, ever verbalize how much I appreciate that. There have been times when this show has become an obsessive compulsion, but this show has also kept me sane as well, and the fact that you guys have tuned in and enjoyed and contributed has played a huge part in that. So, yeah, with all sincerity and nothing but love, I want to say thank you. I am actually going to be taking a short break. I'm actually going back to the UK for about 5 weeks. It's the first time I've been back in 2.5 years. I cannot wait. I am just so excited to see people, see places, and just kind of recharge myself and get myself back on track and move forward. So, yeah, there's going to be a bit of a mid-season break following this episode, but we will be back. And I'm not going to promise that I'm going to record anything when I'm back in Britain, because I think I may just take the time to detach in a healthy way from things that I normally do and what have you. But there may be something cobbled together, maybe a short little something down the pipeline at some point. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to the second half of the season. We're going to get into some really great stuff. But as for now, as always, thank you for listening. Look after yourself, look after each other, and until next time, keep it dimed out.